Hello and welcome to the Somerset Archaeological and Natural History Society, which is usually known as SANHS. My name's Lizzie Induni and I'm the current chair of SANHS. This evening we have a double act. We've got two for the price of one. Both Tim Youngs and Jane Robertson will be talking about farming in protected landscapes with particular reference to the Blackdown Hills. Tim Youngs is the manager of the Blackdown Hills National Landscape, which was formerly called the AONB. Tim has been in post for 6 years and he formerly worked for Somerset Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, DEFRA, and Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group. And Jane's an expert in talking to farmers about nature conservation. As usual, Tim and Jane will take questions at the end of the talk. To ask questions, you'll need to activate the chat button at the bottom of the page and type in a question. To find the button, just run your mouse over the bottom of your screen and a series of buttons should pop up. If the button's not there, it might be at the top right or even hidden under 3 dots. Because we're recording this lecture, we won't use names in the question time. It's free to register for the talks, but a donation of £5 towards the ongoing costs of SANHS would be greatly appreciated. The donations button is on the SANHS website donations page, and when donating, please label your donation farming in protective landscapes. To make things easier, a link to the donations page will also be posted on the chat button at the end of the lecture. So, first of all, over to Tim.
Hi everyone, many thanks for the invitation to talk tonight. So what I'm going to do is, as Lizzie says, I'm going to introduce farming in protected landscapes. I'm the manager of the Blackdown Hills National Landscape, and what I'm going to start by doing is just run through a bit of background about what the National Landscape is as a place and what we do. So you may or may not know you might not know the geography, so you can hopefully see on this screen. So we're third of the area of the Blackdown Hills is in Somerset and 2/3 in Devon. So it almost stretches to Taunton, very close to Wellington, and then round into Devon to Honiton, almost to Axminster up to Chard. So it's a ring-fenced area, and it's one of, you might not know, one of 44 protected landscapes in England, 34 of which are national landscapes. So the Blackdown Hills is quite a recent designation in 1991, but the designation status is actually the same for national landscapes as national parks. Which again, maybe not a lot of people know. It's just our purposes are a bit different. And it's designated for a series of special qualities, which include things like springline mires, broadleaf woodlands. There's 700 listed buildings. Can't remember how many scheduled monuments. Exactly, about 15, I think. But it's that sort of, I'm sure you know the area probably. It's that sort of quintessential patchwork of small fields, tall hedges, etc., etc. So that's why it's designated as a really very special area. Population around 13,000 in the national landscape, but you've obviously got all the towns around the outside. And I thought it might be interesting just to, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but set a bit of context. So you see the red arrow there, so that's Blackdown Hills. And what you might not know is how quite contiguous the national landscapes are, particularly across the south of England. So it's quite small, but to our immediate south, you've got East Devon, and then almost touching into Dorset, which then arches around up into Cranbourne Chase, sorry. And then across the Vale of Taunton, you've got Quantock Hills. And then up a bit, you've got Mendip Hills. The really huge area is Cotswolds, which is the biggest national landscape. Bigger than the Lake District National Park, apparently. It's huge. And then you've got northwest, it's Downs and Chilterns. So yeah, in turn, when you start to think about literally nature recovery at scale and the opportunity to restore landscape and join these places up, it's pretty impressive, really. So we've got an awful long way to go to restore them, but let's say the building blocks are there anyway. And so, yeah, our team are quite a small team. So, yeah, based at Hemyock, just over into the Devon side. So our strapline, our core function is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty. But natural beauty and landscape has all those components sitting under it. It's biodiversity, it's carbon and climate, it's heritage, it's cultural heritage, and it's vibrant, communities and local economy. So it's more than just how a place looks; it's how it ticks, really. And then our governance is quite light, which you'll probably be pleased to hear. So we get out and about and do as much as possible, not just sitting in meetings. So we've got a partnership management group, meets 3 times a year. It's got various farmers and landowners, Natural England, Environment Agency, National Trust, people like that. Yeah, and then we've got a 5-year management plan that I'll talk a bit about in a minute, which we're just in the process of reviewing. And then there's sort of, as ever in this changing world, there's a lot going on. So in 2019, the government set up the Glover Review, which was a review of protected landscapes, really looking at their function and seeing what was good, what was working well, what wasn't working so well, how we should be responding to the climate emergency and biodiversity crisis, and working on well-being of people as well. And so it was very timely, and we're just starting to. Well, government have just announced what they're, what they'd like us to do on that, and we obviously plug into all the national policy changes. So you've got things like local nature recovery strategies. You've got the Nature Recovery Network. You've got the county climate plans. There's a whole plethora of things that we contribute to and plug into. Yeah, and collaborations and innovation is key for us because we're such a small team. If we didn't collaborate, if we're not fleet of foot, then we just simply wouldn't achieve what we need to. So yeah, our breadth of work. So our reason for being really is that we review, coordinate, and oversee delivery of the statutory 5-year management plan, which is the plan for the place. So it sets out across all objectives what needs to be done in order to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, and it tackles sometimes conflicting objectives that you might imagine. So you do more of this thing or that thing, and then how can it be balanced, and how can you achieve good delivery? So yeah, that's a big piece of work we're just starting on now. And we also coordinate the partnership management group that I was talking about a minute ago. We advise on planning, so we're not a statutory consultee. We haven't got a big planning unit. We advise the component local authorities on planning. It's quite a nuance, and not like national parks, who are the authority. And then we do a lot of work with engaging communities, events and promotion. Do a lot of work with the farming community. We've got a farm facilitation group with 120 farmers. We do a lot of projects with the farming community and help them through agricultural transition. And then we either lead projects or we catalyse them. And the latest strapline now is nature, climate, people and place, which includes historic and cultural heritage, etc. And this is just a bit of a teaser, really. So we're just working up a new vision for the the new management plan, which will be 2025 to 2030. And we've just been playing around with the 2050 vision, and it's quite small text, apologies, but so ignore the true beauty bit because we're going to change that. But probably maybe at questions at the end, or come and talk to Jane and I another time. But we be really quite interested in your thoughts on this vision. You know, is it fit for purpose to tackle the climate emergency and biodiversity crisis? And is it setting the bar high enough? So I'll kind of leave that hanging, but be interested in anybody's thoughts on that. So the management plan sets the direction and the high level actions for our work for the next 5 years, basically. But more than just our work, the work of the whole partnership and the work of others for the Blackdown Hills place. And we do a lot of engaging with people. So we have a annual forum. So a couple of years ago, we had something called Making Rivers Better, which was just down into Devon. But it was getting citizen scientists together to talk about a lot around, mainly around rivers, obviously, because as per the title, but it was about how to galvanize action, how the Environment Agency can use that river data, all the different methodologies, how to align it. So this cartoon illustrates all the different aspects. So it was an absolutely brilliant event, and we had some site visits. So that's so we chose that as a theme that year. And then 2023, we had a Festival of Heritage. So we hadn't done one before. So we had RAF Colmhead guided tour. We had a Finds Day in Hemyacht, which was brilliant. So we had people brought their buckets of medieval pottery and bits of metal along, and we had the finds officer there to help people figure out what these strange items were. And then people bought slag, from old furnaces in the Hemyacht area. So it was and there's a whetstone mining tour. So whetstone mining I think it's internationally important in the Blackdowns, and particularly down the sort of western side is very important for whetstone. So there was a talk on that as well. So we were keen to repeat it in 2024. Be keen on anybody's thoughts on that. And then focusing back on nature a bit more. In 2019, the AONBs at that time signed up to the Colchester Declaration, which was effectively a commitment to be more ambitious for nature and climate and people. So you probably can't read that, but you get the idea. It's a series of targets really around priority species, around areas of wildlife habitat that needed to be restored, working with landowners. So it's a kind of call to arms really to say, there's a lot of work to do to recover nature and all the protected landscapes, and this was sort of setting out what needed to be done. And then, on the back of that, really, in 2021, we wrote a nature recovery plan. And what we did as part of that, we took, you might not have heard of these, but they're strategic nature areas. They were defined about 15 years ago, and they're still really valid now. So what they did for the whole of the Southwest was they set out at scale where you could do nature recovery work. So it wasn't about one site, it was about a cluster of sites. And what we did in the Blackdowns is we took that data and further refined it. So we aligned it to sub-catchments. So everything in green colour is the Axe catchment. Everything in orange down the middle is the Otter catchment. And then the light blue is the Colne catchment. And on the Somerset Ridge, you've got water that flows down into the Tone and the Parrot. So that's a kind of brown-red colour. And for each of the 14 areas, the purple is the plateau tops. So for each of the 14 areas, we set out where the current existing important habitat was, the wildlife site, local wildlife sites, the champion species location, which I'll talk about in a minute, and also what actions were needed in order to recover nature for each of these areas. And then that we use that as part of the scoring for farming and protected landscapes that Jane will talk about a bit later. So we're basically using this as a blueprint for investment and grant schemes. And we're feeding it into the local nature recovery strategy that Somerset Council's leading on. So yeah, so we chose some champion species. So it's species that need to move through the landscape. So it's like the hazel dormouse, horseshoe bat, I think, or grey long-eared. I can't remember. Sorry. So they they need to commute along hedge lines and small copses, and they need feeding areas. And then you've got a suite of priority butterfly species that are a bit more site-based. They were linked. So they were linked to landscape features, but also important sites like springline mires. And then you've got the adder as well that occurs on the peatland mosaics higher up along the ridge. And I thought you might be interested in these as well. So this shows soil carbon stocks. So the red and the brown areas are where you've got higher density of soil carbon. So 0 ground level down to 150 centimeters if the soil's that deep. And it's really quite interesting because you can start to see, obviously, areas that are richer in carbon. So in terms of climate mitigation, the absolute number one priority is to keep that carbon locked up and don't let it start emitting. Sequestration is another step along the route, and that's actually taking carbon in from the atmosphere and locking that up. But I mean, the first step really is to lock up what we've already got. And then, if you look at this map, I don't know if you can see that or not, but let me just go backwards and forwards again. So that's soil carbon density. And if you can see the sort of green and other colours coming in my circles, so the green and other colours are the priority habitats, the most important habitat. And so it's not a huge surprise that you can see that some of the most important habitats are also carbon rich, and that's partly because they're the springline mire mosaic. So they occur on the wet valley sides all across the Blackdowns, and they're generally less agriculturally managed, so they may be not ploughed so often. They might be permanent grassland. So for all those reasons, really, you start to get an organic humic type soil forming that holds more carbon. So this is just me playing around, really, just thinking, well, what habitat complexes are really most important for carbon, but also for biodiversity. So it sort of bridges. We've written a climate action plan, so it bridges the nature recovery plan and the climate action plan. I probably need to speed up a bit because I'm talking too much. But anyway, onto farming and protected landscapes, which is just one of our many programs. So yes, the program started in July 21, and we're in year 3 now, and it's got one more year to go. And it's funded through DEFRA's agricultural transition plan. So it operates across all national landscapes and all national parks. And it's quite joined up. So there's a forum where Jane and others sort of share which schemes are coming forward and what's eligible. So it's back to this nature, climate, people and place, but very much, supporting the farming community to change in a positive way through agricultural transition. And this just gives it, this is year 1, but it gives you just an impression of the spread of schemes. So all across the Blackdown Hills, plenty in Somerset. This one's interesting on the outside of the boundary because we can also fund schemes that are upstream of another national landscape. So the whole of the Axe catchment, all the way up to Chard, is all is all eligible for farming and protected landscapes, even though it's outside of our red line boundary. So that's why that's there. And yeah, this is mainly year one, just some ideas, some examples, sorry, of projects. So there's all sorts of things from, yeah, scrub control, hedging, tree planting. And then you've got machinery. So we've set up a small machinery ring. For example, we've got a Logic seed harvester, which can go into a hay meadow, collect seed from a donor site, which is species rich, which basically is just a brush that brushes the seed heads off. And then you take that seed to a recipient site, which is possibly quite species poor, and you can spread that seed and like yellow rattle, etc. And then it will hopefully in time become a donor site in its own right. So yeah, and then we did compost loos, did sort of educational sites, more machinery, and some soil carbon work. So and ponds and you name it. So yeah, Jane will talk in a minute about some more examples, but it's a very flexible scheme. Farmers like it because it's relatively easy to apply for. But it's not, yeah, it's not just farmers. So parish councils, any landowner. So that's maybe something we can talk about at the end is, you know, go and knock on the door of your local parish council if they're in the Blackdowns, and if they own land, get them to apply. So yeah, just a bit more on. So this is nature. So as you might expect, it's about do you know the Lawton principles? Bigger, better, more, and joined. That was the Making Space for Nature report in 2010. So that reflects this really. So it's, you know, we want a greater area, greater connectivity. Existing habitat is better managed. And then species can move freely as well. So you've got a connected landscape where hazel dormouse and other species aren't isolated. Yeah, and then on to climate. So we talked about this a bit already. So we want, yeah, lock up the carbon that in soils that's already there, encourage sequestration, and then reduce emissions. Yeah, linked to flood risk as well, just encouraging the natural sponges of like this picture here, just to hold on to the water. And yeah, just promote the value that certain land uses have for carbon storage and make the landscape more resilient. And then people, so it's yeah, it's nature and well-being, it's underrepresented groups, more diverse audiences linking to the market towns around the outside, and more volunteering. Yeah, and then places, this is an old lime kiln, so it's restoration of historic structures, and yeah, the quality and character of the landscape. So my last slide is just to say that we've got a pretty hefty budget for this next, from April for the last financial year of the scheme at the moment, got £407,000. So we really are looking for some quite big and exciting projects. So a single applicant can apply for up to £50,000, and intervention rates can be up to 100%. So yeah, just yeah, to get the thinking caps on about, you know, what in the Blackdowns or the whole of the Axe project, Axe catchment, you know, yeah, what opportunities are there where we can really make the most of this money, wrapping around other schemes available. So that's it from me for now. So I'll pass it over to my colleague Jane. Thanks.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. So great. So I'm going to talk to you about the Farming and Protected Landscapes, the actual grant itself. It isn't a agri-environment scheme, it's a smaller scheme. We do lots of capital, small projects within the Blackdown Hills. And I'm going to run you through some examples of those. Okay. So we've got Adams Apples. So Adams Apples is just outside the area of the National Landscape, but we had scope to set up this agreement. So it's just in Dolford, just outside Kentisbeare. So it is funding to raise fruit tree stock. So what we decided to do is that we could fund some trees for them to supply our Blackdown suppliers, which is why it's just outside the boundary. But this one, we have a panel of people that sit on our panel and we present our projects to them. And this one raised quite a few questions, mainly because it's a commercial venture, but that's okay. We want to support business too. So originally it included funding to raise broadleaf tree nursery as well as fruit trees. But this was negotiated out. We do have a need for nurseries in the area, and it'd be great to fund some more, perhaps. We've got the government targets that we need to treble planting rates for woodland creation by 2025. So that's next year. And we could do with some nice, we're losing our nurseries in our area. And so I think it would be lovely to have more nurseries come into Fipple or come into the Blackdown Hills. The Forestry Commission are on this with tree production and seed sourcing grants, but they are quite difficult to apply for, and Fipple tend to be quite easy to apply for. So, and we do quite a lot of hand holding. So that would be one of my ambitions for 2025, if we can find somewhere to grow some more trees. So we've got the woodland creation targets, which would mean that we do need more trees in the area, but also we like local seed because it's good for, we've got less problems with importing pests and diseases, which nurseries often bring in from out the area. So that was the Adams Apples. So they're growing some great fruit trees. If you want fruit trees for yourself, I'm sure they'll sell you some as well. They're a great little company. We had a separate project with a quarry in Church Stanton Parish Council. So they have a community orchard, well, they have a community space there, and we helped them buy some fruit trees for their community orchard. And they will then also, they've also got like a community shop, so they will sell those there. We also put a compost toilet in for them because they have camping up there at the quarry. And so things like scouts, overnight scouts, so they can actually stay the night. And what else did we do? Oh, and we had we funded them some wildlife boxes. So that was really nice. So they've got a team of volunteers which will put the toilet in, put the orchard in, and also knock up some wildlife boxes. So that project is actually happening at the moment. So here is another example of this is quite typical of what we do with Fipple. So we've got South Ean Gotley Moors, Triple SI, Site of Special Scientific Interest, really important for its springlime mire. Here we did some gorse, willow and bramble and bracken scrub control under the recommendation of Natural England. The reason I've included this is because it gives you an example of our consultation process. So certain things need consultations, particularly the historic environment. So if you have a look on the map on the right, there's some numbers there, and they are areas of historic interest which are shown on the historic record, the Somerset Historic Environmental Register. So one is for a medieval earth bank, and the other is for the remains of a settlement, which is particularly a cottage. So we consulted the work of in the scrub control wasn't going to have a detrimental impact there, and it was after a bit of chat, we decided that these subsurface features weren't going to be upset, and the project could go ahead. So every one of our projects has some kind of historic environmental consultation with it. Sometimes it's just a desk-based exercise to see if there's anything there. Other times it becomes a bit more detailed, and we have good advice from county archaeologists and the like. So and then so that was South Gotley Moors, and just to let you know, and just along the side of that, we had a hedge laying under a separate agreement with a separate farmer. We laid some hedge adjacent to a bridleway. So we do quite a lot of hedge laying and scrub control in the area. Springlime mires, as Tim said, are really important for us for not only the carbon, which we just discovered earlier, but also, they've got some really lovely suite of species, so plants, invertebrates as well. They're pretty special places. So on to the next one, we have a project with butterfly conservation. So this was at Mount Fancy, Wrottesley and Staple Hill, so woodlands just south of Taunton, and we funded a habitat assessment here. So looking at small pearl-bordered and marsh fritillary butterflies. So they're quite specialist. They are quite rare in the area now, quite sadly. So we were looking at what habitat in the area was suitable for them. There was 2 surveys, one in 2019, and we funded a follow-up survey with FIPL to look at more areas of suitable habitat, and in particular looking at management practices. So was the local management actually affecting the wintering habitat for the caterpillar of the butterfly, and making sure that we gave these butterflies every opportunity we can to be successful. So the small pearl-bordered, like common dog violet and marsh violet, and the Marsh really likes devil's spit scabies, so that's what their caterpillar survives on. So yeah, they're really beautiful, and it's, you know, you're very lucky to see one, but there's really good access up there if you want to go and do a bit of butterfly spotting. So you've got also adjacent to that, we've got somewhere called Southview Farm, and so and the surrounding farmland to the woodland, it's really important that we have a nice habitat connectivity, and that the farms around those areas are functioning well and providing clean water. And in this case, we were trying to hold back some water in some of their areas, using what we call leaky dams, a nature-based solution. So we across the Blackdown Hills, we put up the structure like you can see on the right, and just trying to slow some of that water back. It's good for the local environment within the wood, but it also stops the flow of water at speed in sort of like flash environment, flash events. And so we like to put in 3, 4, 5, 6 of these things, because one of them in a big storm event doesn't really cut it. So we have a series of these dams. Yeah, they do great things in holding water back. So we've got quite a lot of those projects in the Blackdown Hills, scattered all over the place. Actually, it'd be lovely to map them all and have a presentation just on those alone, because there's a lot to be said about these leaky dams. So we have so that's butterfly conservation. So on a different type of project, but actually very similar, similar location. So again, I've been choosing as many projects as I can from Somerset. So just south of Somerset, again on the way to Staple Fitzpaine, you have Youngwood and the Naroche Woodlanders, which are working tirelessly up in the wood to provide some really good people projects. So what we've got here is we've been funding them for the last 3 years. In year 1, we had machinery sharing. So we funded a timber trailer and a mini flail for the wood, and that forms part of our machinery ring. So like the seed harvester that Tim was talking about earlier, anyone in the Blackdown Hills can come along and use that kit if they need to. So we can, that's really good to know. And we also funded some chainsaw training for some volunteers. And in year 2, we funded a solar powered generator. And so that generator is used to in sort of like underneath some of the canopies where they do some forest school works to help with crafts, and also they do a lot of cooking up there as well. So that's great. So this project is really good at reaching people that would maybe which maybe really take advantage, really benefit from being in a woodland environment. So we have families with children with additional needs or social disadvantage, and there's lots of adult wellbeing sessions which cater for adults with life challenges like mental illness, substance abuse, long-term unemployment and homelessness as well. And there's a group on a Wednesday which go up in that category, and unfortunately this year there was funding shortfall. So it looked like there wasn't enough funding to fund them over sort of like November, January, over the last 3 months of the year. And they're quite dark years for people with social disadvantage, and especially with mental health issues. So actually getting people to come in week after week after week and have that continuity of them having somewhere to go is really important. So FIPL stepped in and to fund those last 3 months, and they're supported by community groups, social services, and lots of agencies within Taunton. They're massively oversubscribed, and we could probably do 5 of these projects and still be having people ask for more. So it's been a really, really, really cracking project. So one, to show the diversity of what FIPL can support. So here we have Otter Head Lake. So many of you might have been here. It's a very popular walking destination. So you can see it's just north of Churchingford. And here was a project to improve the access. So we've got some before and after photos for this one. So if you have a look on the left, yeah, it was pretty rough going in places, and it's also not really good for the river to have that much erosion into the water. So we funded new paths and new bridges as well. So that was yeah, really good, and it's yeah, highly used. So those paths will probably yeah, a lot of erosion due to a lot of footfall. So a lot of people actually getting out, not just walking their dogs, but having fun times with their families and what have you. It's a really great place to go. And then my final example is the Blackdown Hills Hedge Association, great group of people. So in the second year, we funded first aid training for 12 instructors and committee members of the Hedge Association. And you can probably see in the back of that photo, there's a marquee. We funded catering equipment for events. And it's really important because these hedge layers like to have a competition once a year. And it's really important that hedge laying is a really big part of the Blackdown Hills landscape, and to encourage these individuals to get together, have a really good friendly competition, you know, cake and a cup of tea, and to keep this skill. It's called Skills of the Hills Hedge Events because hedge laying is a skill, and we really want to encourage people to continue that, because that had the hedges have shaped the landscape in the Blackdown Hills. So there was so in the second year and also this year, we're funding particular farmers to have their hedges laid. So there was 620 metres of hedge laying in Luppet. So we've directly funded the farmer that, and then they could then get these guys to come in and do this event. And then we've got 620 metres of clay hedges in Clay Hayden to be laid under competition on the 2nd of March. So if you want to come along and have some of that cake and cup of tea and just go and meet these people, yeah, it's a really, really good. I think I look at the hedges in the Blackdown Hills as historic features. You know, it's a really fantastic living historic feature. So there we go. They're my examples. So I'm sure if you have any amazing, if any of those have inspired you, we are looking for more projects. If there are any of the ones that are like you've seen or anything else, you can see the diversity of what FIPL can do, and we're there to answer any questions. So I'm Jane, and then there's Mark, who's not here today. So you can call us or find us on our website, or we'll be very happy to answer any questions now or on the phone with you if you have any.
It's fantastic. So exciting. What a wonderful project to be involved in. And I think what's really I find interesting is the way you've managed to make the most of the money that you have by using other groups to promote your ideas. And that seems to be a really good way of making the most out of what you have. We have quite a lot of questions come in so far, which is exciting and shows that everybody's listening hard. Oh my goodness me, there's loads of them. Okay, so do you look at? I'm sort of interested in old buildings, and do you have anything to do with old buildings, or is that just a completely different aspect of work? Anybody? I'm not used to having 2 people to talk to.
Do you want to go, Jane, on because we've got a historic buildings element, haven't we?
There is a historic buildings element to FIPL, and there's actually additional money this year for FIPL funding for historic buildings, but unfortunately the window for application for that and to get planning permission in time to actually restore some of these buildings has been quite short. So some people like the Dartmoor Hills National Park, they've already got loads of buildings up their sleeve ready to go with planning or specs. We would be interested in finding if anyone has a building of farm historic interest. So we really need to be sort of, it needs to be agricultural. We've had people ask us to do the church, for instance, but it has to have some link to farming or
yeah. So really, you're thinking about repairing sort of agricultural buildings, really, like barns,
and for that
stables.
use. So making sure they're watertight, number one. So, they stay, they can stand up for another 100 years. That's the priority. Making sure that use will remain, the use will remain as a farm building or what it was intended for, cart shed or what have you. And bridges, that they're really interesting as well in the landscape. So yes. Farm buildings, if to kind of keep them safe and to keep them in the purpose and the job that they were originally built for, as opposed to an Airbnb, if I'm totally honest.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there might be scope for workshops within there, or make it a classroom activity in an old linhay or something like that. Yeah.
Did you say that your funding was coming to an end at the end of this year, or is it just the project that's coming to an end?
The project, Tim's probably better on this one. But March 2025. We've got so we don't know what's happening. Tim might be able to give a little bit of an inkling what might happen next.
So that's farming in protected landscapes. And then we've got various other projects running we haven't had time to talk about.
Okay, so you're not going to just all disappear at the end of 2025 then?
No, it's just no, I mean, farming in protected landscapes, what DEFRA have said is this will evolve into something else. It might not be called farming in protected landscapes, but
it will continue. The work will continue.
Yeah, I mean, you've got environmental land management schemes, which are the new agro-environment schemes, and they're getting rolled out from 2025. And there's 3 component tiers in that, which you may not know about. And that, it's possible that FIPL will absorb into that, and then we might become local conveners for the environmental land management scheme. So
it just seemed that it would be so tragic after all this great work that you're doing with people to lose it. Got a question here. How do national landscapes relate to NOBs?
So the designation it's a bit confusing. It's still area of outstanding natural beauty in the legislation. But the reason for the name change really was that most people don't know what AONBs are, and they're nationally designated special places. So the national part of the name reflects that, and landscapes does what it says on the tin, but it also reflects the whole movement around nature, climate, people, and place, and tackling the climate emergency and nature recovery. So it's supposed to be a bit more of a bit less passive and a bit more,
How does that relate to national parks then?
So national parks haven't changed their name. There's 10 national parks and 34 national landscapes, and then together those form the protected landscape network across England and Wales as well, and actually Northern Ireland. There's national landscapes in Northern Ireland as well.
But they have different rules and regulations then? Why aren't they all just national parks?
So the national parks have got different purposes.
Right.
So they've got an actual purpose for wildlife and a purpose for access and recreation, whereas we haven't got that purpose. And they're also the authority. So they're somewhere like Exmoor, which is 2/3 in Somerset, they are the planning authority. Their funding's also 10 times more than ours. So it's although the designation's the same, so the legislation, the 1949 Act, is the same for both, but the purposes are a bit different, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. More questions coming up. Will the local nurseries be growing Somerset and Devon species? I'm sure they will.
I think Yeah, the apples will be a specialist in Devon species. I'm sure they're growing Somerset species too. And they do have a species list, if not available on their website. If you just drop them a line, they will email that to you. It's quite extensive. Yeah, the purpose is it was local species, local seed, local provenance, and yeah, local climatic conditions, so they thrive better.
Yeah, fantastic. What are wildlife boxes?
Okay, sorry, I should have explained that. So they come in three sizes, and they can be a little kind of wooden bat box or small bird box, slightly larger bird box, or you can get the larger barn owl box. So they can be, yeah, so they're mainly four bits of wood stapled or screwed together somehow and stuck up in a tree.
Somewhere for animals and birds to live in,
Yes,
and
yeah,
yeah,
they take a
yeah,
while to
okay,
colonize, but they
yeah,
do, yeah, they get all sorts of things in,
yeah.
dormice included. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very interested in the carbon capturing. What does sequestration mean? You were using it a lot, and I wasn't quite
Oh,
sure.
sorry. Yeah, so it's sucking carbon out of the atmosphere into the. So, I mean, the classic example is in a peat bog or a wet area, you've got sphagnum mosses, which are the, when you wring them out like a dishcloth, they're full of water, and they take carbon in from the atmosphere, and then because it's a wet and anaerobic habitat, the vegetation just builds up and effectively creates peat. So you've got all that carbon taken in, but it doesn't go anywhere. It just builds up in the ground. So that's
So
what
the
that's
important
climate
thing then,
change. Sorry, go
sorry.
on.
No, I was
You
going to
carry
say
on.
the important thing then is to have plenty of soggy bits of landscape,
Mm.
Yeah,
and you
it's
do that by sort of creating dams.
yeah. So historically, so the springline mire tends to run at around something like 210 meters all the way around the valley side. So it's like a plimsoll line on a ship, and so um, quite a long time ago, you would have been able to see the sort of seepage line all the way around the valley side. And then you've got, yeah, all that sort of wetness running through the soil, and that they would be holding a lot of carbon. So over time, sadly, we've lost some of our springline mires, but there's
Mm.
opportunities to, restore what we've got left. So it's a really special feature of the Blackdowns. It's this, yeah, like I say, running all the way around
Yeah,
the
you
valley
can
side.
usually
So
see when people build medieval houses, they always build along the spring line because that gives you a spring of fresh water. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, and so how many of these dams have you managed to put in?
Oh, good question.
Hmm.
There are various projects which are looking at within the FIPL, but I think, well, then we have another project which Tim will probably be able to talk to you more about, Lucy's project, because she's putting in some dams as well, isn't she?
Yes, there's a big climate change adaptation project called Connecting the Colne, which starts up in Somerset and then flows down to Cullompton and down to Exeter. I'm desperately trying to remember how many she's put in. I mean, she's worked with 25 farmers. I could find out afterwards. The exact number,
It
I'm
doesn't
not
matter.
sure.
It's
At
really
least 100
interesting.
anyway. I
It
mean,
just know,
yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And how receptive are the farmers?
I mean, very receptive. I mean, one farmer, there's a place called Caller's Farm, sort of near Clay Hyden. He's put in, I've forgotten his name now, but he's put in 34 of these
That's
dams just on
fantastic.
one
Yeah,
farm. So he's just like steps, all the way up a
yeah,
water
yeah.
course. And uh,
I think that's really
yeah,
exciting. It's so
yeah,
nice to think that the farmers are really buying into this and really enjoying it. Yeah, and want to make a difference to their landscape, really,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Oh, got something here that somebody would like to know. Have you any plans to introduce beavers?
Well, they're already here, so I mean, I don't Otterhead Lakes. I mean, if anybody hasn't been, it's a real hot spot. There's something like 4 or 5 beaver families there. And if you walk up to where the old mansion used to be, I don't know whether this means anything to people, but um, you carry on a little bit, you can see all there. You suddenly start seeing these trees that have got big cartoon bites taken out of them, and that's all the beavers. And then the top dam, whose name I can't remember, it was at the top lake at Otterhead Lakes. When the beavers came, they actually created a new dam that filled the whole thing with water. It had been drained for years, had a whole, a break in the dam, and the beavers rebuilt the dam and filled it. But then,
Fantastic.
I think it was about 9 months ago, it blew out in a big storm. So I was talking to a beaver expert today, and what the beavers actually create foundation stones. It's like building a wall. They put really heavy stones in the bottom, and then obviously build the wooden dam. But then they put quite large stones at the top of it as well. So they're not just moving wood; they're actually moving
Right, and that just
large
keeps it
stones.
weighted down. Because when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have buildings up in the Orkneys and the Shetlands, they have a lot of wind there. So all the thatch is always held down by ropes with great big heavy stones on the end. So it's a similar thing, isn't it?
yeah. So they're all the way through the Otter catchment. Then they're in the Colne catchment as well.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot in Somerset out and about, particularly over Froome Way. But
Wow.
they might, I just don't know. They might be on the Tone as well by now. I'm not sure.
How
Yeah,
exciting. How
yeah.
lovely. And that must surely be making quite a significant impact on the landscape in terms of biodiversity.
Well, yeah, all the research that's been done on them, and they're what's called a keystone species, aren't they? So they're
Right.
just fantastic river engineers, and they're restoring wetlands, and then you get more amphibians, and water's held for longer and cleaner.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
all free. Nobody, you haven't
yeah,
have to pay anybody for that one.
yeah.
Oh, I've got somebody who's very excited. Didn't know there were beavers at Otterhead Lakes. Going to have a look next time. Fantastic. Another question: are there any farming techniques and practices which are unique or specific to the Blackdowns?
That's a good question. I mean,
Hmm.
the hedge association that Jane was talking about really is pretty special because the hedge event, I think, is one of the biggest one-day hedge events in the country. And then, they do lots of training sessions, and so in terms of traditional skills, it's just absolutely phenomenal. And then you've got, well, there's loads of things. You've got all the chert, that was the type of
Yeah.
flint that was used to make buildings. That's quite unusual. I'm trying to think what else, but um, we had a woodland association that sort of died off a bit now, but lots of woodland management going on. Yeah, what else, Jane? I can't think now.
Um, yeah, well, there's just
Yeah,
traditional animal husbandry as well, just the way people kept their farmsteads and the way that they grazed very locally to their house and how that shaped the landscape with the changing um, seasons as well. And yeah,
Well,
um,
it sounds like a fantastic project, and we'll be very pleased because we're going to be having it on the SANHS website. So if anybody wants to see the webinar again, they will be able to. Unfortunately, you won't be there live to answer any questions, but nonetheless, it'll be a real benefit, I hope, to you and certainly to SANHS as well. Fantastic. Oh, there's a little poster come up. It says, if to find out more about the Blackdown Hills National Landscape, there is a link there for us in the chat button if anybody needs to know. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody else has. It's been really well attended tonight. So, and nobody left halfway. So that's always a good sign.
thanks for having us.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And bye.
Bye.
So for our next event, we've got a new webinar coming up next month, and that will be Dr. Chris Smart of Exeter University. And he'll be looking at the Blackdowns as well, but this time he'll be looking at the early ironwork on the Blackdowns. So he'll be looking at Iron Age working, I think it is, on iron mining and smelting iron. So, and then in March, we have another webinar coming up, which will be about the forthcoming exhibition at Wells Museum concerning a discovery of pottery that they found when they were excavating. And that will be on the 14th of March. And live events, our next live event at SANHS will be Chris Webster, who will be taking us on a tour of the Taunton stop line. And that's looking at the Second World War defence system. And if you're interested in that, you'll need to go to the SANHS website or ring the SANHS office to book a place. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everybody who's been involved in doing the webinar tonight. So that's Nathanael, Allan, Tony, of course, don't forget Tony. And thank you all for coming along tonight. Goodbye.